Welcome to The Criminologist, the podcast dedicated to educating and entertaining our listeners. We bring you subject matter experts from around the world and share the latest and greatest evidence-based practices and interventions to help individuals desist from a life of crime and delinquency. We do so by painting an accurate picture of that journey from the perspective of the justice-involved individual. Too often, our perceptions of those individuals are tainted by media-driven caricatures created to sell newspapers or movie tickets. This adds little to a healthy dialogue as to how to best address criminality and the reintegration process. This podcast avoids stereotypes and biases in favor of the lived experiences of those we can best learn from. Now please, welcome the host of The Criminologist, Joseph Arvidsson.
Hello, and welcome to episode 66 of the Criminologist podcast. Happy to have you all with us today. As loyal listeners of the show are aware, I like to split our time interviewing guests between two camps, essentially. Those criminology subject matter experts from around the world that we can learn from. Folks from nations and criminal justice systems ranging from Canada to Ireland, Scotland, Great Britain, and most recently Armenia, but also those with lived experiences we can learn from. Individuals who have walked that pathway towards desistance. People such as David Breakspear, Noel Moran, Ryan Buzzard, David Hayes, Cam Stevens, Eddie Flanagan, and Gethin Jones. We are going to stick with that second population today. This time, going to keep it domestic though. No passport required this week as I speak with a very inspirational individual by the name of Kardell Sims. At the risk of stealing a bit of Cardell's thunder, I can tell you that he has truly dedicated this later chapter of his life to giving back to those who are still on their journey of change. Between his publishing accomplishments, his YouTube channel, his podcast, and an entire curriculum he has created to help those desist from crime, you are about to hear an example of someone leveraging all of their lived and learned experiences to help others, even those of us involved in creating and advancing change efforts ourselves. So glad I crossed paths with Cardell. I am confident you will enjoy his story, highlighting both his pathways into a criminal trajectory and his incredible journey on the pathway out. Please enjoy my recent chat with Mr. Kardell Sims, and I will see you all on the other side. Well, why don't we start off, Cardell, by you telling us a little bit about yourself and, generally speaking, just a little bit about the journey you've been on.
I grew up in a impoverished neighborhood. My mother was 16 years old when she had me, and I had an older sister that was 2 years older than me that my mother had at 13 years old. And she was on drugs real bad. She was on crack, to be exact. And my father, I really didn't know too much about him. He was somewhere trying to be a pimp from what I was displaying when I was, now that I'm grown. But I grew up in that environment, dysfunctional household. Everybody in my household, grandparents, aunties, uncles, we all stayed in a big family house. Everybody, adult, had some type of, either was an addict or they was an alcoholic. And so at a young age, I adapted this mindset that I was a product of my environment. And I grew up in the bad projects, Anthony Buckner projects in Missouri was where I'm from. And it was bad. It was killings, it was drug dealings, it was just bad. And I adapted that mindset as a young person. And I learned how to hustle at an early age. And I used to walk to grade school, and I was still, there was a Lay's potato chip company right there, and they would leave their garage door open. And I would run in there and grab about 4 or 5 big bags of potato chips, and I would go to school and sell them. And that was my first time that I was really learning how to hustle. And as I got older, I joined the gang, and I was stealing. I was just doing about each and everything. And at 15 years old, I called my first case, and it was a first-degree assault, almost attempted murder. I was a juvenile, and because I could play basketball real good, I had coaches come to my court proceedings, speak on my behalf, explain my household, what I was growing up in. My mom was on drugs and everything, and so I ended up getting probation and put into a foster home. So luckily, the foster home that I was put into was one of my summertime coaches. So basically, he took me in as a foster child. But I still had the same mentality. Like, I had this product of my environment mentality in me. And one of the stipulations of my probation was I had to graduate high school. So I played basketball, graduated high school. And during this time that I caught that case, I was on the verge of really dropping out of school. I was one of the last one of my friends left that was still in school. And I was on the verge of dropping out. Only thing that kept me in school was playing basketball. And so I ended up graduating high school with a basketball scholarship to go to college. I went to a junior college first, and I stayed at home to go to junior college. Still same mentality. So while in junior college, I was selling drugs. I was hanging out with gangs. I was partying, but I was still going to class and doing enough work so I could continue to play basketball. That's all I did, was just enough that I could play basketball. So I went from a junior college to a Division II college, and I chose to go far away from home because I felt like I was getting in trouble at home and I needed to get away. So I ended up going away 12 hours away from home, going to play basketball at a Division II college. But when I got there, I found myself hanging out in the environments that I grew up in, because I still had the same mentality. I carried this mentality with me everywhere. It's like I had a chip on my shoulder, and I just had this mentality. I didn't know what it was at the time. And so I was, even at the new school, I was playing basketball, but I was involved in the streets. I was selling drugs, I was robbing, I was using drugs, I was partying. And I did enough to play basketball. And once my senior year was over and basketball season was over, I went full-fledged into the streets, selling crack cocaine, marijuana. And I caught my first drug case. I catch my first drug case. I was sitting in the county jail for about 7 months fighting the drug case. They give me probation because of my background with college and everything. As soon as they let me out and I went to go see my probation officer, I was back in the mix selling drugs. So within probably 6 months of that, I caught another drug case and gun case. I took it to trial and I lost. And I ended up getting a 7-year sentence and a 12-year sentence ran consecutively in the Missouri Department of Correction, totaling 19 years. I walked into the Missouri Department of Correction. I was 23. I walked in the Missouri Department of Correction with a 19-year sentence. And when you walk into the Missouri State Penitentiary where I first went, there's a writing on the wall when you walk in. It says, "Leave your dreams and your hopes behind." And that's what I did. I was in prison, just involved in everything in prison, using drugs, selling drugs, fighting, stabbings, and everything. All I did during my first prison bid was just that. I jailed. And I played basketball, did a lot of frivolous. I didn't really do nothing. And what happened was a Senate bill passed that cut my percentage of time on drug cases that I was required to do. It cut it down. And by this time, when that happened, I was up for immediate parole hearing. So I went to my parole hearing, and it had to be the fastest parole hearing in the world. I walked in there. It was the parole board panel. They were sitting there. It was 3 of them. And the spokesperson said, "Mr. Sims, you are part of the problem. You got a few more years with us. And what do you think about institutional behavior and drug treatment program?" I told him I'd take the program, and that was the end of the parole hearing. I walked out. I came in and out so fast that the officer that walked me in, he went and used the restroom, and I beat him out. He came out and said, he came out, he said, "Go on, you can go in there." I said, "All right, I've been in there." He said, "You done it?" He was like, "Yeah." And man, that's the fastest I ever seen somebody have a parole hearing. And so I did a few more years and I got released. I took the behavior and drug treatment program because through my criminal thinking, I knew it was going to cut my time. I go to the program, I complete it, I do what's supposed to do, I'm going to get out a year earlier. And so that's what I did. And I got out a year earlier, so I ended up doing a little bit over 5 years on that prison stretch. So when I got out, I went right back to the same neighborhood, started hanging around the same people, and just did the same thing. That's what I did. I just went right back into the street game. And within 1 year, I had caught another drug case. And so they put me in the county jail. I was fighting that drug case while on parole. And my PO didn't violate me because they had came up with a new thing, law in Missouri, where when you caught a new case while on parole, they will wait to see what it's called a delay of action. And what the delay of action does is they'll wait and to see what the outcome is of the new case that you're fighting before they send you back. If you beat the case, then you liable to walk out of the county jail. If you get some time on it, then they're going to send you to DOC and you're going to start on your time and you're going to do your parole violation time as well. And I beat the drug case, so I walked out of the county jail and I went right back into doing the same thing. And then, like I said, I was in a gang and there was a lot of shootings and murders going on, so they violated our whole gang because everybody that was in my gang, almost all of us were on parole. We had all of us all had the same stories about parents, everything, and we all had been to prison. And so they violated us for association because there was a lot of gang shootings and stuff going on. So they violated us for association, sent us all back to prison. So I went back to prison. I didn't do nothing. I just jailed. That's what I did. Every time I went to prison during this time, all I did was just go to prison and basically doing what I was doing on the streets, gang banging, fighting, and using drugs and really not doing anything. And I did my violation time, which is 10 months. I got out and did it. The crazy part is I went right back to doing the same thing. Same place, same people, same neighborhood, same police, same judges, same everything, same. I went right back to it and went right back into the game and started selling drugs. And so it was about 2 years. I was in it for about 2 years, or maybe 3 years, close to 3 years. And I wasn't getting harassed by the police and all. This was unusual. And before I can really think about it, the federal government came in and picked up 31 of us, 31 people out of our gang on conspiracy charges and gang activity. We had a federal indictment. So they picked us all up. We had a conspiracy to distribute 25 kilograms or more, gang activities. It was aiding and abetting. It was just a lot of charges, and they called it Operation Coin Collection. And when I walked into the federal courtroom, because when the feds picked us up, they took us to the federal courthouse in the holding cell. Then they walked us in the federal courtroom and they handed us this paper. And on this paper, it was an indictment paper. They had the charges in your name and everybody's name and nicknames and everything. And so I'm looking at this paper and I'm not really focused on the charges and the time. I'm not really focusing in on that conspiracy intent of life. I'm focusing in on the fact that it says Kardell Sims versus the United States of America. And I'm like, man, it's not versus the state of Missouri or the county that I lived in or nothing like that. This is the United States of America. Like I really made it to the top in a sense, because in the streets, in the drug game, like if you make it to the feds, you a big dog. You made it to the top. But while I was looking at that, I kept asking myself, like, man, why do you keep finding yourself in these situations? Why do you keep finding yourself here? And I realized right then that I was the first victim of my own actions. Not the only victim, but the first victim. And from that point on, I just started doing everything that I can to prepare myself for whenever. I didn't know when I was getting out, but start preparing myself to never come back to prison and be a different person when I got out of prison. And that meant educate. That meant doing a lot of reading, studying self. I read a lot of books and started putting together plans, vision, and goals. So when I was released out of prison, I had a blueprint. And that's what I did the whole time I was in federal prison for the 57 months. And so when I got out, I just put all the plans and everything in motion. I didn't have no money or nothing when I got out. I just had these 4 brown legal folders full of all the notes and plans and ideas and goals. And I had like 30-day plan already laid out. This is what I was going to do. I knew I was going to the halfway house when I got out. And so I just stuck to the plans that I had. That's all I had. So when I went to the halfway house, I got me a job, rode the bus to work. I got a job doing telemarketing for $11 an hour. I had to be there at 7. I had to catch the bus at 5 because the bus makes a transit change at 6. So I had to take 2 buses. I had to be there at 5. So I got up at 5 every morning, rode the bus to work. After work, I started taking life coaching courses. And so I had a routine. I'll go to work, after work, do life coaching courses, still studying about business. And I did that every day. And within 6 months, I had got me a life coaching diploma. And I was out of the halfway house. I had a vehicle. I moved home. I moved back home with my family, with my mother at the time. And she was real patient with me, and she helped me. I had a strong support system. That was the best thing. I had a strong support system. And so I got 2 jobs. I worked at a battery manufacturing place, driving a forklift. And then I also worked at like a Hibbett Sports. I would sell shoes and a sporting goods store. So I always worked 2 jobs when I first got out, and then I would work on putting my business together. So I was still going to life coaching school even after I got the diploma because I wanted to the next level diploma of life coaching. And so I ended up becoming a Master Certified Empowerment Life Coach. As soon as I got that degree, I filed for my business license and I started my own company, Visionary Hustler LLC, and I was life coaching, helping people manifest their vision and be the boss of their mission while working 2 jobs. So I got working 2 jobs and I started one of my first company. And so what I did was, for extra money outside of the jobs, because I still had fines to pay, my child support to pay. I spent like $600 a month in child support, so I would host my own consciousness and success seminars. And I would talk about individual human performance. I would talk about how your inborn attribute plus your acquired attributes times your attitude would determine how you perform as a human. And the seminars would be free, but I had typed up some books when I was in prison, and I had wrote some books by this time I was out. And so I would sell my book called Have the Keys to Success, and along with t-shirts at my seminars, and that's how I would make money. And so I slowly started transitioning from working them 2 jobs into running a company. And so I started another company, a nonprofit organization, because I wanted to help rebuild the neighborhood that I helped destroy when I was out there selling drugs. And so I started that, and we started doing a lot of local events and stuff for the community. And then when the pandemic hit, I had to restructure my profit business, Visionary Hustler LLC, and it wasn't doing too good at one point in time before the pandemic, and I was already going to make some changes, and I really started working in the reentry field. And I talked to a friend of mine, and he was like, "Man, you're an expert. You've been going in and out of prison, staying in federal probation and parole for 21 years. You've been going through the system." constantly. You're an expert at it. You know what to do and not to do in order to be successful. Look at you now. And so I started focusing in on the reentry area, and I wrote a book called Inmate to Inspiration, sharing my life stories and everything that I learned and the lessons I learned, and it got reentry tips. And from that point on, I've been doing reentry work, and that's been almost a year. And I made so much growth and progress during this time that, man, it was the right change that I needed to make.
You're a great interview, Cardell. You knocked out about 2 or 3 of my questions, which were really about how you turned your life around and, talking about those pathways out of crime, in addition to, you did a great job covering your pathways into criminality. I was going to ask you about your educational goals. You touched on those certificates as well. All of this led to not just the book, but you have your own YouTube channel, Reentry 101. Why don't we talk about that, and then we'll get to your podcast, the Reentry Journey, in a second. But maybe let's focus on the YouTube channel first. Talk about that experience.
So yeah, the Reentry 101 is I got a curriculum. I got a digital curriculum that I give away for free. Reentry 101. It's a master curriculum. I have paperbacks that I got a sponsorship program that people buy sponsorship packages, and we ship it to people inside of prisons. Reentry 101 on my YouTube channel, them are the videos that go with the digital course. It's the do's, the don'ts, and tips to reentry. One of the tips is criminalities can't be an option. That's one on Reentry 101. One of the tips is criminality can't be an option. Meaning, when you get out of prison, you can't have it in your mind saying, well, if this don't go the way I want it, if I can't get this job or this and this and that, I'm just going to go back to what I know. And I've done that plenty of times where I went and got a job and it didn't pay enough. I just didn't like it. And then went back to exactly what I know. And so that's the main thing that you got to have getting out of prison, is that criminality cannot be an option. If you give criminality an option, you already have one foot towards going back to prison as soon as you get out with that as an option. So that's what Reentry 101s are. They are 21 videos of do's, don'ts, and tips of reentry.
And I know, but I stumbled across your podcast, The Reentry Journey. I know you focus a lot on talking to individuals with lived experiences. You share the story of how someone told you that, or referred to you rather, as an expert because of your time in the penal system. And I often tell folks that I split time with sort of subject matter experts on criminology and in the world of academics or policy, but I love talking to folks with lived experiences. And I say to myself and my listeners, people like Cardell are the true subject matter experts. If we're going to learn that journey, again, we have to talk to folks who've walked that path. And again, I know that's the focus of your podcast. Can you maybe share with us some of the highlights of doing your podcast entitled The Reentry Journey?
Oh yeah, I love the reentry journey. We talk about the pre-prison, during prison, and after prison. We highlight more of the after prisons, because reentry is a journey. And it doesn't start when you get out of prison. It actually starts when you're inside prison. That's where you have to start making that transition for a successful reentry. Because everybody says, "Man, I'm ready. I'm ready to get out of prison. I'm ready." We know don't nobody want to be in prison. Everybody's ready to be out, but the problem is not everybody prepared to get out and stay out. And so that's what I focus on the reentry journey. We highlight the good things, the obstacles that a lot of people that got out of prison face in their reentry journey. So that way, if somebody that's tuning into the reentry journey just now getting out of prison, and they might watch the Reentry Journey podcast, and one of the guests might say something about going through something when they got out, and it could be exactly what that person is going through right then and there. And so they talk about how not only just the obstacle they faced, but they talk about how they got around or got over that obstacle. And that's what the Reentry Journey is all about, highlighting the journey of people getting out of prison, We do pre-prison and during prison because we want to also show the mindset and the mind state that you was in your criminal lifestyle, and now the mind state that you have now that you have transitioned. I like to call it transition back to a civilian. That's what I like to call it. You transition from a criminal to a civilian.
I'm sure folks are interested. I will leave a link to both your YouTube channel, Reentry 101, as well as your podcast, The Reentry Journey, in the show notes of this episode, so folks can link right to your resources as well. And space permitting, I'll try to leave a link for your book there as well. Let me ask, Cardell, in your experiences, just broadly speaking, what works in rehabilitation and reentry? And on the flip side, what doesn't work?
What works in reentry is strong support systems and mental health. Strong support system and mental health. That's what works. Reason why I say that, and it's crazy because what I'm about to say don't work is going to might be shocking, but what don't work is giving people resources and they're not mentally ready. Like you get a lot of resources. But the thing is, like, if I get out to tomorrow and I go see my PO and say, "Oh, we're gonna put you in this program. We're gonna help you get your apartment," because they got a program like this in Missouri. I work with some people on probation and parole officers, and they got a program where people get out and if you are what they call high risk, they put you in this program. They help you they pay you for your first month's rent and deposit. They give you a cell phone. They give you $500 cash monthly to do whatever with, and they help you get transportation, whether it's you getting a bus pass or if it's Uber, or they get you a bicycle. I mean, there's so many classes and there's so many things you have that come along with it, UAs and classes. But what happens is, me talking with these probation and parole officers, a lot of the people don't show up to class. No, they just use and abuse the resources. And the reason why they do that is because you're giving them resources, all these resources, and then you're giving it to them and they're not mentally prepared, or they haven't made that transformation and that shift to be able to handle these resources responsibly.
So to follow up on that, what piece of advice would you give to a well-intentioned probation or parole officer who just is lacking that insight that you just kind of shared with us there, Cardell?
I would recommend, just like you recommend, I would tell the parole and probation officer, just like you have stipulations that you give that says go to NA, go to AA, you should have stipulated, especially people that have done of 2 years or more. I just say that. Even a year, forget it. A year or more of prison time, just like you stipulate NAAA, you should stipulate mental health counseling once a week. Because people get out of prison dealing with post-incarceration. And I mean, a lot of times incarcerated people find themselves isolating themselves when they get out. Scared to communicate their feelings, their emotions, because you're coming from a place where you are not your communication is aggressive and you can't show no emotions. You might have lost your mother, you might have lost a brother, some children, and you can't show no emotions. So there's a lot of things you should be dealing with during that time. That's why I say it's like you stipulate NAAA, you should stipulate mental health counseling once a week.
Yeah, we talk a lot on this show about those sort of scientifically derived risk factors, what we call criminogenic risk factors. Some of the stuff you've talked about, Cardell, substance misuse, lack of education, risky companions. But what we're learning more and more, and again, you just noted this, is that incarceration in and of itself is a risk factor. That alone needs to be addressed. That time spent in custody. Speaking of custody, what advice? Kind of the same question I asked you to direct at a probation or parole officer. What piece of advice would you give to a warden or a corrections director looking to make some serious changes in how they do business?
have prison programs that are designed and came in and taught and ran by former prisoners that got out and changed their life. My friend, I got a friend. The reason why I say that is because we've been through it. And a lot of the courses inside of prisons, they are, you either got prisoners teaching the course, or you got people that just coming in and giving you worksheets and, hey, yeah, here. You know, I think you need actual reentry programs that have been built, designed by people, formerly incarcerated individuals who's been out, who's been successful for so many years, and they doing great work. I know a lot of people who got that are a lot of formerly incarcerated individuals that trying to get in prisons right now with their reentry program, and they just would rather have if they can just get their reentry program on a tablet inside of prisons, they'd be happy with that. But I think the wardens need to bring them type of programs in, because now you got people who's been through it and can really, truly, honestly tell you how to navigate if you're really trying to do it the right way, and tell you what you really can and cannot do, like how serious you got to be.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think that is the missing link that you just alluded to. We're not relying enough on, again, those true subject matter experts with that lived experience to really kind of push us across the goal line of what we know works in rehabilitation and reintegration. Hey, what's on the horizon for Kardell Sims? If I have you back on the show in 5 years, Cardell, what are we going to be talking about?
We're going to be talking about reentry one-on-ones inside of the prisons. Me going inside of the prisons. That's my ultimate goal. I want to be able to go in. I've been in a few prisons since I've been home, county jails, but I really want my program. I have partnered up with Securus and JPay. We all know they run the technologies inside of prisons. One big company called Inventive Technologies. They're the parent company of JPay and Securus. So I've been working with them back and forth. We already got 5 prisons that's saying yes to my digital course inside there on the tablets inside their prison. So for what's next for me is I want to build that, and that's reentry 101. 5 years from now, I want my reentry 101 to be a solidified reentry program inside the prisons, and I got people from all over different states going in the prisons, formerly incarcerated individuals going into prisons, using my curriculum to help people become successful once they get released.
And I will do what I can to promote that vision, Cardell. Like I said, I'll leave links to your YouTube channel, your podcast, and your book in the show notes here. Cardell and I are also on LinkedIn. I know a lot of my listeners are on LinkedIn, so if you are intrigued by what you're hearing from Cardell today, go ahead and send Cardell a connection request on LinkedIn, and you can learn all about his very worthwhile endeavors. Cardell, thanks for being on the show, and I look forward to talking to you in the future.
Thanks a lot for having me. I appreciate you giving me this opportunity to share my story with you.
All right. Be well, friend.
Be well.
So many great things I could highlight from that interview with Cardell. For me, though, the biggest theme from that conversation was that it yet again reflects the importance of listening to the client, or as our friends in Europe have taught me to think of that population, the importance of listening to the service user. We are living in a world in which we increasingly rely on the use of software to survive. And some of you may be familiar with the initials UX. UX is actually shorthand for user experience. Folks in that sector have realized the importance of just that. I Googled what a UX designer does, and I found user experience, UX, design is the process design teams use to create products that provide meaningful and relevant experience to users. This involves the design of the entire process of acquiring and integrating the product including aspects of branding, design, usability, and function. Well, if you are in the criminal justice system, particularly if you have several decades of experience, such as I do, ask yourself how often you or your agency have applied that definition to those you serve. Ever? That is, how often has your agency asked a probationer or a parolee what their experience has been like on supervision and how you could adjust your practices to improve that user experience? I think it's something we're really missing here. That is one of the reasons why I have become a brand ambassador for Make Time Count Today. Make Time Count is a UK-based social enterprise looking to grow here in the United States. Make Time Count has developed a platform that connects vulnerable people with local services that can help them on their journey of change. Clients are connected with an ecosystem of support, including mentors, family members, service providers, their probation and parole officer. The app includes a shared calendar, a chat feature, and a service directory for self-referrals. Now, for the agency, probation parole officer using the platform, they can manage their clients, staff, and all interventions in one place. We enable easy referral from local authorities to multiple support agencies, and each intervention is tracked with 360-degree feedback provided. If you or your agency are interested in learning more about the Make Time Count Today platform, reach out to me at thecriminologistpodcast@gmail.com. And hey, if you're looking to become a network expansion associate, reach out as well for some exciting employment opportunities. Back next week with a fresh episode. In the meantime, you may contact the show or reach out to us through our website, theparagongroup.llc.com, for training or presentations as to evidence-based practices or implementation, or, of course, the topic of desistance from crime. If you have questions or comments as to this podcast, feel free to contact the show via our email at thecriminologistpodcast@gmail.com. That's thecriminologistpodcast@gmail.com. Remember to follow us through our Facebook page and our Instagram page at The Criminologist Podcast. New fun images are being added all the time to those feeds. You don't want to miss out. The Criminologist Media Group is also on Twitter at Crim Media Group. That's CRIM Media Group. Go ahead and give us a follow. You could also connect with me, Joseph Arvidsson, on LinkedIn and follow both the Criminologist Podcast and the Paragon Group on our LinkedIn pages. Lastly, if you've not already done so, check out and subscribe to our YouTube channel, The Criminologist, for additional content as to the themes of this podcast. Merchandise is now available. Reach out if interested. And if you believe in what we're doing on the show, if you're part of the movement, please spread the word. Tell a friend or a coworker or a colleague about us. Ask them to subscribe to the show. And of course, do so yourself if you've not already done so. And always remember, folks, there's no them, there's only us.
The Criminologist Podcast is a production of the Paragon Group, LLC. For speaking engagements, interviews, program design, or training opportunities, please visit us at theparagongroup.llc.com. If you enjoyed the show, you can find more content and videos on our YouTube channel, The Criminologist. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Both the Criminologist Podcast and the Criminologist channel are brought to you by the Criminologist Media Group. Be sure to give us a 5-star review, and thanks for listening.
The thoughts, statements, and opinions of the host and cast members do not necessarily reflect the views of their employers and are those of the host and cast themselves. Any discussion regarding client statements, behaviors, actions, or crimes are purely fictional and are used only for the purposes of example. Any examples that could be deemed to be related to an actual individual or individuals are incidental.